What's up, everybody? The SEC gets 8 teams in the tournament, but who got shafted? And the biggest takeaways from Mizzou's spring game. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along on today's show. We're going to run through the latest news from the NCAA Tournament, all the SEC teams that made it, and then we will get into Missouri as they had their spring game a little bit earlier than everybody else. So we'll recap that with John Miller, get the biggest takeaways from that over the weekend. But I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to Everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network covering your team every day. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire could feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs is going to help you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Go post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. All right, let's dive into it as the NCAA Tournament is set. The SEC got 8 teams into the men's basketball tournament. That ties the conference record for the most teams into the tournament in a single year, tying 2018 and 2023. So before we dive into who made it and what the seedings are, first off, Auburn, they won the SEC tournament on Sunday. The Tigers beat Florida 86-67. Johnny Broome scored 19 points and grabbed 11 rebounds as Auburn won its third SEC tournament title. The Tigers avoided the upset bug that took out the SEC's top 3 seeds in Friday's quarterfinals, leaving Auburn as the highest seed still standing, and they capitalized. They never trailed in the final against Florida, and they had a SEC tournament title to those won in 1985 and 2019, earning a second one under Bruce Pearl. Now, as for the seeding goes, the committee did not do Auburn any favors, making them a 4 seed in the tournament. They are paired up with 13 seed Yale, and if they manage to work through this part of the bracket, they could potentially have a date with top seed UConn in the Sweet 16. Now, assistant coach Stephen Pearl complained yesterday. He was on the guys with the final round or the next round rather, and complained saying the SEC tournament doesn't mean a damn thing if you can win 3 straight games and win the SEC tournament or SEC championship and still be a 4 seed. He said it's, quote, a joke. So Auburn makes a nice run, wins the SEC tournament, and still gets in as a 4 seed. I think the committee needs to kind of rethink this a little bit, because if had Auburn lost to Florida, they probably still would have been a 4 seed, right? So basically the game on Sunday didn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Looking around the other SEC teams that made it, the Texas A&M Aggies, who were considered a bubble team these past few weeks, they are in the South region as a 9 seed. They're paired up against the 8 seed Nebraska Cornhuskers. As some have pointed out, A&M is set to introduce their new athletic director this week in former Nebraska AD Trev Alberts. And now the 2 schools will be playing each other this coming Friday. So kind of fortuitous with the timing there. By the way, A&M, they fell short of the SEC tournament title for the first time in 3 seasons, losing to Florida on Saturday. But Buzz Williams just kind of turns it on this time of year, and Aggies played well in the SEC tournament. Next up, we got in the South region, we got Kentucky in as a 3 seed. They are paired with 14 seed Oakland up in Pittsburgh. The Cats are 16-2 all time against schools currently in the Horizon League, and they're 2-0 in the NCAA tournament against Horizon League schools. The Florida Gators, they are in as a 7 seed in the South region. They will play the winner of Boise, Colorado. We could get a Kentucky-Florida Sweet 16 matchup if both schools can win a couple games. But rough news for Florida on Sunday as their big man, Micah Handlogden, suffered a devastating leg injury and had to exit the game on Sunday, and it was confirmed as a lower leg fracture. So he is donezo, and rough news there for Florida. But who knows? And as a 7th seed, they got a chance. We'll see who they end up playing between Boise and Colorado. Over the Midwest region, we get South Carolina in as a 6th seed at 26-7. They get a tough matchup with number 11 Oregon up there in Pittsburgh. A lot of people picking Oregon as the right upset there, but of course, Lamont Paris doing an outstanding job this year at South Carolina. See if they can go take care of business. And then also on Thursday in the Midwest bracket, it is Tennessee in as the 2 seed. They won the regular season SEC title and finished 24-8 overall. So Rick Barnes' crew in as a 2 seed, taking on 15 seed St. Peter's. And if Tennessee is able to win that one, we could potentially get a Rick Barnes rematch against the Texas Longhorns. Texas in as a 7 seed in the Midwest region. And then lastly, in this bracket, we've got the Midwest, or rather the West region, where we have Mississippi State getting in as an 8 seed, taking on 9 seed Michigan State. Mississippi State was firmly on the bubble last week, but they won a couple of SEC tournament games to help punch their ticket. Look, Michigan State, not great this year. They went 19-14, but a lot of people saying, you know what? You don't mess with Tom Izzo in the NCAA tournament. That no matter what his team's regular season record is, when the bright lights come on and it's March, Izzo makes a run. So it's going to be a tough challenge for Chris Jans and company, but Mississippi State, give them some credit. They've played much better basketball here as of late, and they earn their way into the tournament. And then lastly, in the same bracket in the West, it is Alabama in as a 4 seed. They will take on 13 seed Charleston. Reminder, Nate Oates had Bama in as a 1 seed a year ago, and now they get in as a 4 seed. This is the first time in Bama school history that a team has been a 4 seed or higher in back-to-back seasons. So just a reminder of what a great job Nate Oates is doing over there at Alabama. And same thing, Mississippi State, if they can make a run, Alabama can make a run. We could get both of them to meet up in the Sweet 16, but going to be tough with number 1 seed North Carolina in the West bracket. But as we mentioned, SEC ties with the Big 12 for most teams in with a bid. 8 teams getting in, and Big 10 gets 6, Mountain West gets 6, ACC gets 5, Pac-12 gets 4, and so on and so forth. And so your top 4 seeds by the region: Auburn's the 4 seed in the East, Kentucky's the 3 seed in the South, Tennessee the 2 seed in the Midwest, and Bama 4 seed in the West. So for your best SEC teams all year long, right there as top 4 seeds, and got a chance to make a run. So we'll see what they are able to do. All right, there you have it. You're all caught up on everything going on with the basketball tournament. When we return, we will switch gears, talk some college football. Missouri, they had their spring game over the weekend. We're going to be joined by John Miller to talk all about it, get his takeaways, as Missouri was the first of the SEC teams. Funny, we're doing our SEC, or rather our spring previews with all the SEC teams. Today we're doing a spring review of what Missouri did, because they're done for the spring. So we'll talk about that next, coming up with John Miller here in just a second. First, I want to remind you guys, this week's March Madness bracket highlight is brought to you by our friends over at Nissan. Each week, we are picking one team that stands out, a team that has pushed it further than the rest. Just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs, these guys were able to take it to the next level. And the Auburn Tigers, you could call them a pathfinder. They certainly found their path over the weekend. They've been thrilling to watch. They've created a lane for themselves after winning the SEC tournament on Sunday. And of course, their player of the tournament, Jeanne Broom, has carried the Tigers all season long, and certainly made them a team to watch throughout this March. So whether you take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada, you can go find your next big adventure. Like a lot of these teams are going to be finding their next big adventure over these next couple of weeks. We'll see how many can go deep and further, just like these SUVs can take you further. Go shop NissanUSA.com. NissanUSA.com. And again, check out that Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, and Nissan Armada, and see if you can get yourself in a new ride today. This episode also presented to you by our friends over at Fire TV. Look, they are your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV, whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament. you're going to want to make sure you have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro sports leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on all the latest in the world of sports, from the tournament to NBA to MLB and lots more, not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, trust me on this. Go learn more. Visit Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Roll along here, Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. Keep coming back, checking us out each and every day as we continue on with our spring previews. Hey, by the way, Locked On College Basketball bracket breakdown is now available on the Locked On College Basketball podcast. Our experts, Andy Patton and Isaac Shade, will break down their brackets and discuss everything you need to know, filling out your winning bracket and getting ready for this year's tournament. Find the Locked On bracket breakdown now on the Locked On College Basketball podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. And a team that made the tournament last year and this year, they are sitting on the wayside. They went winless in the conference. It is the Missouri Tigers. Join us now is our buddy John Miller, host of Locked On Mizzou. John, welcome in, man. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Chris. Thanks for having me as always.
Yeah, luckily you guys, at least you had your football action to talk about this weekend, because not so much basketball action. But for those who don't know, Missouri does things a little bit different. Eli Drinkwitz likes to get everything out of the way early. He said something in the past about it helps avoid injuries and distractions with spring break and all that kind of stuff. So just a little bit different. But Mizzou held their 2024 black and gold spring game on Saturday. We both watched it. No tackling in it, so
right.
Not a whole heck of a lot you could take away from it. But the black squad, led by Brady Cook, outmanned the gold squad, winning 10-9. I thought what was very interesting, John, was they kind of did like a player draft, and it was interesting. Brady Cook ended up on the opposite team from his big receivers like Theo, Wease, and Luther Burden, and that. So I thought that was an interesting dynamic. But give me your overall takeaways on what you took from Missouri's spring game.
Well, yeah, it was tough to take a ton, not only because of a lack of tackling, especially in the run game, but even the pass game. If you were going south in particular, there was huge wind gusts for basically the entire game. But really my biggest takeaways is that Brady Cook offensively, I thought he looked like Brady Cook. I really did. He had one interception that hung up deep into that wind, down the left side of the defense to new Clemson transfer Toriano Pride. So I thought Cook looked pretty good, considering the bad circumstances for passing, considering he didn't have his top three receivers on his team. But I thought Marquise Johnson looked pretty good as his number one option. I really think that Missouri offense is going to be a top 10 unit this coming season. So more of a question for me, what's this defense going to look like? A lot of Missouri consternation when Blake Baker, the former Missouri defensive coordinator now, went to LSU. The Bayou Bengals decided, hey, $2.5 million a year. How's that sound? He took the deal. Can't really blame him there. But to me, so far, the base part of Missouri's defense didn't really look that much different, other than just a couple minor details for me, for the most part.
It's interesting with the receivers, because we talked about Theo, Wease, Mookie Cooper, and Luther Burden, the three biggies, are on the opposite side. But we got to see Marquise Johnson and Joshua Manning also kind of making a name for himself, coming down with some big catches from Brady Cook. So you kind of put those guys in combination with the three studs we already know. And man, I start to think ahead to the summer, we start to do all these ranking, wide receiver rooms and all that across the SEC. And I got to think Mizzou's is going to be ranked right near the top.
Yeah, those first three guys you mentioned, I can't imagine that there's really another unit that has more returning production than that. And you didn't even mention Daniel Blood, who was the offensive MVP of the game. So, yeah, those next couple guys, especially Manning and Blood, I'm not sure if there's going to be enough snaps to necessarily go around there. But Marquise Johnson, who we both mentioned, I'm telling you, he's going to have a big season for Missouri. If you watch the Cotton Bowl, the Missouri passing game was struggling to get going until it was Marquise Johnson who took the top off of the defense. Missouri hit an explosive passing play. And once that happened, really it kind of opened up everything for the Tigers from there. I think he's a guy who's going to be much more than just a deep threat this season. He's going to be coming underneath on drag routes, just doing a whole bunch of different stuff that he was not doing last season. And yeah, I think this is going to be an absolutely excellent offense led by that receiver group.
When we talk about the backfield, there was no more fun player to watch in the SEC last year than Cody Schrader. And, he was one of the best in the conference all year long. He's gone now. They do hit the transfer portal, bringing in a couple of transfers, Georgia State running back Marcus Carroll and Nate Noel from Appalachian State. And both guys, they showed a couple flashes here and there in the spring game, but you can't really tell because there was no tackling. But confidence level in those guys to help kind of carry the load. I mean, the track record since Drinkwitz has been from Larry Roundtree to Tyler Beatty. I mean, it's been great running back and for great running back.
Yeah, and usually just one main running back as well. The bell cow, as a lot of people say these days. That's certainly been the case under Drinkwitz, even back to his one season as a head coach at App State. But speaking of App State, I think Nate Noel is a guy who runs that outside zone technique very well from what I could see from his film last season at App State. Marcus Carroll, more of a north-south guy, so maybe there is more of a combination here at running back than Drinkwitz has done in the past. Though if I were a betting guy, he's going to find one guy and probably ride with him 85-90% of the snaps if he can. My only question would be, Cody Schrader is such a uniquely durable guy and also a guy who you can leave on the field in pass protection to catch the ball. So if it's 3rd and 20 or it's 3rd and 1, he can be on the field. So does Missouri have that guy? I guess we'll find out because it was tough to tell in that spring scrimmage for sure.
What's so interesting is the left side of the offensive line going to be some new guys, Caden Green and Javen Richardson coming in through the portal, but offensive centers back and Connor Tollison, and then Cameron Johnson and Membu back on the right side. So looks like a good offensive line, but at least from what I've been reading, depth could be a concern there. They need to stay healthy.
Perhaps. I think I might be a little more confident on the depth there than you are right now. You didn't mention Logan Reichert, who's a guy who may be working into the guard position for Missouri. He was a tackle coming out of high school. Very tall young man, 6'7", 6'8", that type of deal. And, upwards of 350, 360 pounds. So I've definitely questioned if at this point in his career as a true sophomore, if he could be on the outside and actually pick up pass rushers in the SEC. That's a question, but Missouri seems to be willing to maybe play him at right guard a little bit, see how that goes. And at that size, if he can't move people out of the way in the running game, I don't know who can. So that seems like a pretty interesting fit there. But also, you mentioned Caden Green, the transfer from Oklahoma. I think he's an interesting guy because initially it seems like Missouri wants to plug him in at left tackle. Well, as a true freshman in Norman last year, he played 85-90% of his snaps at left guard. So that gives you some versatility there to play your best five.
We've touched on basically all the offense. Let's switch gears over to the defensive side. I know we kind of touched on a little bit, but you talk about that secondary, and you lose two studs like Chris Abrams-Drain and Ennis Rakestraw, who are both expected to go high in this year's NFL draft. Toriano Pride coming in through the portal. We mentioned he had the big interception in the spring game on Saturday, and coming in from Clemson, a nice piece. But what do you make of the rest of this secondary? Because there are some guys who have played a good bit, but a lot of guys with the transfer either coming in this offseason or coming in last offseason through the portal.
Sure. Well, the good news is Missouri has a pretty decent amount of experience coming back at safety, Dalen Carnell, Joseph Charleston. But yeah, like you say, a lot of production to replace there with Rakestraw and Abrams-Drain off to the NFL. The good news is Drayden Norwood got a good bit of experience last year with Rakestraw missing 2 or 3 games, I believe. And also he was coming in quite a bit on passing situations, playing the outside. in dime packages, for example. Rakestraw would move to the slot on occasion. So Norwood, I think, played very well when he had the chance. And as we mentioned, Pride came in, looked good. So far, so good for Toriano Pride. Obviously, you can see there on your screen, a nice little interception there. Did not get the taunting flag, fortunately. But seriously, a good sign. So far, so good on the outside there for Missouri. It'd be interesting to see just if they're as aggressive as they've been the last couple seasons on the outside, because they have those two good corners. Well, they were able to play a lot more zero coverage, bring some different blitzes than a lot of teams could. That's for sure.
Up front, you lose, a couple big pieces, including Darius Robinson, another guy expected to go high in this year's draft. And, we had him on the show a handful of times, one of our favorite guests we've had the last couple of seasons.
Yeah.
But I like two guys who stood out in the spring game. Number 45, Joe Moore, I thought, had some nice moments where he stood out. But how about big number 7, Chris McClellan, coming over from Florida? This guy looking like he's going to be the next big stud. We're so used to Missouri just putting out big studs every year off this defensive line. And certainly Chris McClellan looks like he is ready for the moment.
Well, Missouri's done incredibly well the last couple years in the portal in terms of especially interior defensive linemen, really edge guys too, to be honest. Like you say, just up front, they've done an excellent job. A lot of that is coaching, and I think Chris McClellan, I think he's got all the physical tools you could possibly want at that position. And from everything I've heard, I think he's going to be a really good player for the Tigers. I think absolutely. You can just see him on your screen there, just a giant mountain of a man. He's got all the speed for the size that he is, all the twitchiness you could want at that spot. Based on what I've heard, I think he really is going to be something very productive for Missouri this season. Another in a long line of good interior players here for a while for the Tigers.
Yeah, 6'3", 320 pounds.
Yeah.
And like you said, ready to make that immediate impact. And so the question is, can everything come together with the losses, but combined with the pieces they have coming back? Schedule is very favorable. We're going to talk with John Miller about that next on what the realistic expectations are for Missouri in 2024. That's coming your way here in just a second. But first, I'll remind you guys this episode is presented to you by our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. Look, LinkedIn Jobs is the place taking care of you and getting ready for what's expects to be a pretty busy summer. When you are hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to go check out LinkedIn Jobs. They have all the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. They have a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats, and you might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a new feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even quicker. Go post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Go post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And we dive back into it with our buddy John Miller, host of Locked On Mizzou. And John, as we start to look at the Missouri Tigers and what is realistic moving forward into next season, man, this schedule really does set up well for them. And I talked with Drink a couple weeks ago at, I think it was the Bear Bryant Awards, and was kind of asking him, like, you guys kind of did the same thing a year ago. You set up your schedule where it was very doable and got off to a hot start, and it certainly falls that way for them again this year. You look at the first few weeks, you get Murray State, Buffalo, Boston College, and Vandy all at home. You don't leave your 4-0 field until October. So
Right.
Pretty good start there, and then you go at A&M, and then you're at UMass, and then you're home for Auburn. Man, you gotta love how the schedule sets up for Mizzou.
Yeah, it does. If you're looking for a high total of wins, there's no doubt about it. In fact, if you think about our friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook, I believe Missouri is an underdog in just 2 games as we speak, at Alabama, at Texas A&M, and heck, who the heck knows where the Aggies will be in year one with a new coach. And by the way, the Crimson Tide have a new coach as well. I know I'm really breaking some new news here on Locked On SEC. Did you hear Nick Saban retired? But seriously, though, that's another kind of break for Missouri, if you will. Don't get me wrong. I'm not expecting the Tide to be bad or anything, but in year one without Nick Saban, maybe they take a slight step back. Hey, it's possible. There is no doubt that a lot of Missouri's toughest games, swing games, are at home this year. I think the schedule sets up quite nicely.
Yeah, it's that stretch from mid-October into November. If they can weather the storm there, like we said, the home game against Auburn, the road trip to Alabama, and then coming home for Oklahoma. Hello, yep. Welcome back to that rivalry. And then some doable road trips at South Carolina, at Mississippi State, and then home for Arkansas. All teams that are considered, kind of, Jeff Lebby's kind of doing the rebuild thing at Mississippi State, and both Arkansas and South Carolina, underachieved last year, and Sam Pittman kind of on the hot seat, and we'll see what happens with Shane Beamer. They go 5-7 last year, miss a bowl game. So it's a crazy schedule when you look at it and go, there's no Texas, there's no LSU. I mean, you'll avoid a lot. No Georgia, no Tennessee. I mean, you avoid a lot of the big dogs that we became so accustomed to in the East. So I almost say that, John, to say, even if they slip up and lose at Bama, and then maybe lose at home to Oklahoma, 10-2 still get you into the playoffs. So it's things would have to go really awry to me for Mizzou to go 8-4, 7-5.
Yeah, I agree with you to some extent, for sure. I also, I do want to point out that Missouri did go 10-2 last season with arguably a little bit tougher of a schedule. At the same time, they needed a 62-yard field goal to beat Kansas State. They needed a 4th and 17 conversion to beat Florida. So the margin in college football, major college football in the SEC, is really small. So I wouldn't say 9-3 would be a disaster or anything like that. But yes, on paper, you're looking at 10-2, and I agree with you. 10-2 gets you in the 12-team playoff in this conference, no matter if it's a relatively weak schedule or not. You're still talking about a top 25-30 schedule nationally.
Maybe we're discounting that a little too much, but losing Harrison Mevis, kicking game didn't look great for Missouri in the sprint game. I mean, that's going to be a big part of this.
No doubt about it. And, well, like I said, the wind affected the kicking game, too, like it affected the passing game. But that's totally fair. Missouri's been spoiled, frankly, with place kickers over the last 15 or 20 years. They've had some really good ones, and Mevis was right up at the top of the list. So it's hard to you can't just hand wave that one away. I'm with you. You got to believe it when you see it with the new guy. Hopefully Blake Craig will be the place kicker. He's the leader in the clubhouse.
Last thought, John, before we wrap things up, and of course we'll talk with you again as the summer gets here and we start to get probably more pieces through the transfer portal, maybe some exits from Mizzou, maybe some more additions. We'll see, but again, we just kind of said it, but give me a realistic expectation. What if you had to put money on the line? What is Missouri's record this year?
I think 10-2 sounds about right. I think that realistically is a goal, and I think that is the goal for Missouri. Let's make the 12-team playoff. Obviously, you'd love to shoot even higher. Hey, let's win the Southeastern Conference. This team should have that goal. It really should. I'm just saying for myself, as a fan and as a loudmouth podcaster, I'll pull back a little bit and say 10-2, let's make the 12-team playoff. That's a very realistic goal for Missouri. Not an easy goal by any stretch of the imagination. It's going to be a tough road to hoe. You're going to have to win some close games to get there. There's no doubt about it. But at the same time, you did it last year. You punched Georgia and Ohio State in the mouth up front a little bit. Kirby Smart said it. I'm not saying it. Just listen to Kirby Smart. Listen to Ohio State after the Cotton Bowl. This team is starting to build something. It's not just a bunch of 4- and 5-star players that Drinkwitz started to accumulate the last couple of years. They're really building a physical culture up front in Columbia that, as you can tell, I'm a big fan of.
And keeping Kirby Moore was a big part of that. There were rumblings that Alabama was maybe going to flirt with him and try to pull him away, but he stays there, and that's a big keeper for Eli Drinkwitz and crew. He is John Miller, host of Locked On Mizzou. Let everybody know what you're going to have up there on your show these next couple weeks.
Oh, man. Well, I'm going to be hitting the NCAA tournament really hard for sure. Obviously, the portal opens in basketball on Monday. Of course, we're still going to find tons to talk about in football all the time. High school recruiting is going to be opening up pretty soon. Of course, the portal. Hey, like Chris was alluding to there, now that spring ball's over, some guys are going to be maybe thinking about going on. So, frankly, I'm going to be like a good running back. I'm going to run to daylight, find the open field. That's what we're going to do on Locked On Mizzou. Appreciate you, Chris.
All right. Always good to talk with you, John. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. Come on back tomorrow on the show. We'll continue our spring preview series. And, hey, for your second listen, check out John at Locked On Mizzou, or on YouTube, go check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming for you 24/7 with all the top sports stories of the day. I'm Chris Gordon. This has been Locked On SEC. Talk to you guys tomorrow.